Do you believe in hope as a strategy? This is the first question of the day.
We need a little hope, I will say that.
Right. So it can be a strategy, right?
Hope is important.
Yeah.
George is like, it is not a strategy.
I'm not sure it's strategy, but it's important.
It's important.
That's totally fair.
That's right.
Hey, Loren.
Greetings, Kelsey.
Greetings from another planet.
Made you giggle.
It's time. Here we go. It's time for another episode of Campus Confidential. You know, it's one of my favorite things to do. So
An intro?
I guess it's good that we're, yes.
That's your favorite thing?
No, the episode. Oh, cranky. Okay, Loren, why don't you tell us who our guest is today?
We have with us Dr. George Grant, who is the president of Saginaw Valley State University. In fact, the fifth president. He arrived there in January of 2023. For those who don't know, Saginaw Valley State was founded in 1963, fairly young institution, about 7,000 students in the Bay Area, or here in Michigan, we would call it the Thumb, sort of up in the Thumb area of Michigan. Previously was chancellor at Penn State on the Berks campus in Pennsylvania. I know him from Grand Valley State University in the Grand Rapids area. He was 24 years there, 12 as the Dean of Community and Public Service, and began his career in really before higher ed as in child welfare and foster care, adoption, family preservation, those kinds of things. I think you'll hear that come out in the episode today. He is the co-author of 12 books, a consultant regularly, and just a genuinely super good person. So I'm delighted he was on the episode with us today.
Two things. One, do you think California likes that Michigan calls something the Bay Area?
I don't know. Maybe not, but
I mean, okay. Two, he wrote 12 books. When I read that in his bio, I'm like, 12 books?
I know. How about that?
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Have I read 12 books? That's
By the way,
that's unfair to me. I have.
Also, we in Michigan don't like that Wisconsin thinks they're a mitten.
Oh.
So,
right?
Everybody's got their state thing.
That's fair. You kind of own things. Yes. We can go down a whole rabbit hole that I won't go down. But George was fantastic. He was one of those genuine people. Full disclosure, I hadn't met George until the podcast, and I just, I was eating up everything he was serving, right? This idea of transparency, people being seen, really creating an environment where failure was allowed, which I think, I didn't know if you and him talked about failure all the time at Grand Valley State.
Well, we didn't, but I knew he was involved in Grand Rapids. There's a conference or a festival, I think it's called Failure Lab or Fail Lab, where basically the point of this is people are willing to share their story of failure as a way to help others learn that A, it's okay to take risks, and we heard that today from him, and B, as a great way to learn. And so we did talk about it in that context at GV, trying to enable that for students. But he's a real capacity builder in people, real culture setter for organizations, and a real, really insightful person, and was insightful colleague as well. So yeah, we did talk about those kinds of things now and then.
I love it. Well, hopefully you as listeners can pick some nuggets that work for you for where you're at right now in your career. And we'll see you on the other side. All right. Well, here we are for another episode of Campus Confidential, and we have Dr. George Grant with us today. Hi, George.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. We're excited to have you. And this season, we're starting each episode with a question. So the question for you today is, tell us about a time you spoke truth to power. And part two of that question, and we can maybe come back if you want to pause after your first part, is what you gained or lost by speaking that truth.
I think the biggest challenge in speaking truth to power is how people interpret or understand what you're trying to do. And so one example that I can think of in that respect is that there was a time in higher education, and I've also worked in non-higher education and higher education, but in higher education, there was a time where was working with one of the public schools, and there was a lot of discussion about the role of the principal and the role of the superintendent and how they interacted or did not interact with the community. And so there was a person coming to town that people were not happy about, but the superintendent felt she needed to meet this person, and people wanted her to not meet with them, to refuse to let them come to the school. And my argument was that wasn't her job, that her job was to make sure that the children that she worked with got all of the services that they needed, and that the people around the room, it was their job to fight for and argue and say this person shouldn't be here or shouldn't come, but that wasn't the superintendent's job. And I also, the other challenge was that the person had a foundation, and so the people who were saying this person shouldn't come was also going to that person for money. And I thought that was an issue. And I called people out on that as well. Why are you denying these young kids the opportunities and the resources that they need, but yet you are going to continue to go after the resources that you needed? So that was a time that I felt like I spoke truth to power. Wasn't a very popular discussion, and for a little while they didn't want me to come back to the meetings, but eventually they did.
What do you think? So what was gained or lost by making those comments for you?
I think for me, that wasn't the focus. So it wasn't that I was going to gain something or I was going to lose something, but because of the priority that I had in making sure that our community got the resources that they needed and that our children got the resources that they needed. And a lot of these children were getting free and reduced lunches, were low-income families, that I wanted to make sure that they got everything possible in order to move forward. And by doing that, I also wanted to make sure that the teachers got the resources that they needed so that they could spend more time teaching and less time trying to find coats or supplies or boots or those kinds of things. And so that was my focus. And so it wasn't, not trying to, that I'm somebody special or anything like that, but I really try not to focus on what's best for me, that I'm in this profession because it's what's best for others. And that's what I tried to do.
In that situation, George, who or what represented the power that you were confronting? Was it the community or was it the?
Yes, it was a lot of community leaders, so different organizations.
I see.
For-profit, nonprofit, who were coming together to have these conversations around who should come to town, who should be part of these discussions. And so it was that group that
almost a coalition of power, it sounds like,
yes.
even in some ways. In that case, what was it or who, how is it you came to that courage, and where today do you turn for the wellspring of support you need when something similarly courageous needs to be done?
I think that goes back to childhood and growing up and being taught to speak out, that people need a voice. And I think when I was first in college, I would say that I'm not sure what area I want to go in, but I want to be able to be a voice for other people. And that was my goal. And then as I got a little bit older, more into my profession, that changed from wanting to be a voice to helping people find their voice so they could be their own voice. And it was that motivation that steered me in the direction of how do I help people advocate, work within systems, when to fight, when to compromise, when to ask questions. And so it was that growing up that taught me those things. And then as I started working in my profession, it was expanding and learning how to help people find their voice, how advocating for resources to help people find their own resources to be supported.
Mm. I love that so much. So advocating for people to find their own voice. What are some, and you talked about advocating within systems and with other people. So what are some of the go-to either coaching or tips or how you help people advocate for themselves? Maybe how you started and where you're at now. What's the progression? Assuming there is some progression there.
I think one of the things that we have to help people learn or help people to understand is how they see themselves. And for a lot of people, they don't see themselves as worthy. They don't see themselves as smart enough. They don't see themselves as being able to be in certain environments. And because of that, they stay quiet. And so it's trying to get people into those environments in order to have a better understanding of the relationships that are out there. So an example is that if I'm putting on an event, that I would have students part of that event and participate. And it was this event that I was chairing, and I had a number of students there. And so while we were sitting there and the event was going on, I asked the students, I said, "Hey, have you ever met a billionaire?" And the students all said no. And I said, "Do you want to meet a billionaire?" And they all said no. And I said, "Well, there's a number of billionaires in the room." And I started naming places that they go. And I said, "That's the person that owns that. That's the person that owns that thing." I said, so after the event was over, I took them up and they introduced them and they met and the people talked with them for a little bit. And then we came back to the table. And I said, "Well, now that you've met a billionaire, what do you think?" And they thought about it for a little bit. And then the first person said, "They're kind of like us." And that's what I was looking for, that you can set goals, that things are not off limits. If you are able to set goals and people to help you set those goals, that's what's important. And so that's an example of finding that voice so that you can do the things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not even just finding the voice, it's giving access, right? Because sometimes you just don't even, when you don't have access or exposure to things, that's what that feels like to me. So this worthiness piece is so top of mind for me. I was listening to a podcast and it was a fitness podcast because I like those, but it was talking around, the question was, is it dedication, motivation that moves people to action? And the person said, it's actually worthiness. Am I worthy of making the choices that are beneficial to myself? And then there was an article today that Loren and I were looking at, and it was talking about how people are staying in jobs and the satisfaction is lower than it's ever been before, but people aren't leaving jobs. And I really think there's something about this self-worthiness or how you show up. So that's a long-winded way to say, as a president of university and you're thinking about the staff and faculty that provide the services to students, how are you helping them around their worthiness and their ability to show up for themselves?
There's a number of ways. The very first way is to be available. That the university shouldn't be an ivory tower, but the president's office shouldn't be an ivory tower. And so you want to give people access so that, like one of the things that I did when I started is that on my web page, that there's a link. And if you have an idea, that you can put that idea on the link and send it to my office. I read every single one. And by doing that, there's just some great ideas that people have come up with. So you're giving people access. You're acknowledging the ideas that people have. You're clear that you can't do all of the things that people are sharing with you, but you're also transparent. My key is to be transparent. So having meetings, having notes from the president's desk, as we call it, that I send out to the campus, updating them on things that are going on. So it's those kinds of things that help faculty, staff, and students, is by giving them access, by letting them know that I am approachable, and finding the time to just sit and talk with someone, to stand and talk with someone, to walk with someone down the hall, but to make myself available and not this figure that people are afraid of. You should never be afraid of the principal's office or the president's office, that it should be a place that you see, in this particular case, you see me as part of the team, not separate from the team.
Mm-hmm. You know, this point you're all making about worthiness makes me think of something. I guess I even would like to assert that worthiness is related to self-esteem, and it's hard to be courageous if your self-esteem is low, if you don't believe that what you have to say is worthy of being heard, if you don't believe that actually saying so and risking will actually create some kind of difference. And so I'm wondering, George, if you can talk a little bit about how should leaders evaluate, among the many things you might disagree with in a complex organization like university, how do you evaluate the risks of speaking up? How do you know when it's the right time to speak truth to power as a campus leader or any kind of leader?
Well, for in my case, one of the first meetings that I had with the campus, that I talked about failure and the celebration of it. So how do we celebrate failure? So you take risks, you try something, it doesn't work, but we don't beat up people, we don't jump on people. You say, that's a great effort, and we might learn something from it. So the total project might not have worked, but there are pieces of it that work. And so how do you take that? And so that's a message that I think is really important to send, is that you can take risks, you can try, you can, I think some use the expression about falling forward or falling up, that you can do those kinds of things, and you're not in an environment where you're going to get beat up if you mess up. Now, the other side of that is that if you keep making the same mistake over and over, then there we have to have conversations about that, and you need to put a strategy in place to address that. But we want people to try. And for me, that's what's really important. And that's one of the goals that I've tried to put in place in any role or position that I've had, is to create that environment where people will take risks. I also, bringing people together, that I think it's important not to hire yourself. Like I say, I have me, and I know what I think. So why do I need to hire a bunch of other people
one
like
of me? Is enough.
Yes, that's more than enough. So I want other people with other ideas, and you bring all of those and then put them on the table, and you start seeing this sort of this jigsaw puzzle that looks complicated, and you start seeing pieces that come together. And the next thing you know, you're forming a picture. And that means you're forming an idea that you can use to move the university forward. And it's giving people that freedom to do that.
It's interesting. We started this with the question of how you spoke truth to power, but now you're in a position with a lot of power, and you've been in positions of power. So makes me wonder, how has someone, or is there an example or a time when someone spoke their truth to you in the position of power, and what was that dynamic, or how does that feel sitting in that position?
Yep. All the time.
There you go.
I wish they would do a little less of it.
Maybe too much. We'll close that info box.
I really created that environment.
Yeah, you did.
So people are comfortable. On campus, off campus.
Everywhere.
People are comfortable with that. And so, but those things don't bother me, because it's someone that has an idea, has a different way of thinking about something. I may not be able to do it. I'm going to be honest with you that I won't be able to do that thing that you want, or I disagree with that approach or that opinion, and we may go in a different direction. because of my role, but I want to hear what your idea is. And it may be something that I hadn't thought about. And I never want to be the person that has all of the ideas. So when I walk into a room, it's not everyone be quiet and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. It's I'm going to be quiet and I want to hear what your thoughts are, what your ideas are. And by doing that, you see people becoming more and more comfortable. So like when I first started as president here, not people didn't share as many ideas because they didn't know me. They didn't know how I would approach them or how I would respond to what they were saying. But as they saw that I was open to their ideas and responding in a positive way, that made it more comfortable for people to do that. So I don't get nervous about that.
You're referencing something else that I think might be underappreciated. And I've always observed you, George, as being quite attuned to it, and that is culture. And there are some cultures where speaking truth to power results in punishment or ostracization or something, right? And then how there's culture where speaking truth to power is not benevolent, maybe. And I think what I hear you talking about is creating as president a culture where it's invited and welcomed, it's transparent, and it can't always be done. But, I hadn't, and we were coming into this, Kelsey, thought about maybe the role of culture beyond personal courage and weighing the risks, how important culture would be. And I don't know, George, if you have any observations about the role of culture and in that regard too.
Yes. Well, culture is the backbone of everything that you do. And so what is it when someone comes to work, how do they feel? Do they feel welcomed, invited? Do they feel listened to? Or are they nervous and afraid? Think about the person every single day. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing and lose their job. And so how do we create an environment where people don't feel like they're going to lose their job? So when they get up and go to work, they know they're going to have a good day. They're going to have great conversations, that they're going to see something and they're going to say, can we address that? Can we work on that? And we're going to say yes or no to that. But that's the culture that we need to create. But it also means that there are times that we need to make changes in the culture. So if you get why do we do that, especially when you're new to a position and you get to ask the question, why do we do that? And sometimes the answer is because we've always done it. And you say, okay, that was good, but we need to go beyond that. And is it something that we need to continue to do? And so part of that is finding traditions and saying, what are the traditions that you keep and what are the traditions that you change?
Mm-hmm. And would you say that there are cultures in which it would be politically dangerous, maybe personally challenging to say no or to disagree, to speak truth to power? Are there environments where a leader has to weigh that, do you think, and be mindful of this may not be the place or the time or the person?
Yes. I mean, there are universities and corporations and nonprofits where the person in charge is in charge. And their motto is that you do it the way that I tell you to do it. And, that expression about, if I want to know your opinion, I'll tell you what it is. and so we do know that those places exist, and those are hard because you could lose your job if you speak up. But when we can create that environment where you don't have to worry about that shouldn't be on the table, that if I say something, I'm going to lose my job. What should be on the table is, if I say something, people are going to look at it. People are going to think about it. And they're going to get back with me with an answer that could be yes, we can, or no, we can't, but not a fear.
And how do I do it with respect and honoring their perspective and all of those things that leaders ought to keep in mind as well, too? Yeah.
Yes. Just thanking people for reaching out to you, for sharing something with you. Take a moment and say thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Say thank you. That's huge. George, when you think back over your life, Because I think some people listening might say, okay, that's easy as you're the president of the university, you're a CEO of a company, you're in a position that you can create that environment. But I'm the director of so and so, and I don't have authority to create my own whatever could be in someone's mind. So, when was the first time in your life that you can remember maybe a story or an example of when you started to create a space that was safe for other people?
I think in a leadership role, my very first supervisory role, which was in child welfare. So I worked in child welfare before I worked in higher education. And the first time I became a supervisor, one of the things that I did is I just got out a piece of paper and I start thinking about the supervisors that I had. And I created two lists: the things I liked about those supervisors and the things I didn't like about those supervisors. And the things I didn't like, I said, I'm not going to do those things. And the things that I liked about those supervisors, those were the things that I was going to do. And so that's the environment that I created. And so as I met with it, so the program hired each person, and then I sat down with them, and they had three pieces. The first piece was your strength. What are the other things that you're good at? And we listed those things. And then the second, and so I said the things that you're good at, that I'm going to come to you and ask for your help so that we can move this program forward. And then what are your challenges? And then we put those together, and I said, well, my commitment is to work with you to address those challenges. And then the third category was, it may not have anything to do with the job, but what is something that you would like to work on, something that you would like to get to develop a skill for? I said, and then we'll work together to try to do that. And so example of that is that one of the people said wanted to learn to do presentations, to do workshops and things like that. And so as I did them, I had that person work with me in developing what we were going to present, and then develop the section that the person would present on. And then over time, they would get better and better at that, to the point that they were doing their own workshops and conferences and things like that. So that's an example of the first time in a leadership position, how to create an environment that we can get the job done and people can grow. And in that growth, that they may leave and go someplace else and not be bothered or intimidated by that. And again, I know people that once they hire you, they think you can't leave.
I think they own you, right?
Yes. And my expectation is that you can leave, and I will help and support you in whatever it is that you want to do, and then create an environment for that to happen. So that would be an example of the first time in a leadership role, in a just a supervisor role. So there were a bunch of people in administration above me that I had to work with, but that would have been the first time.
Yeah, I love that. I think creating space for people. And I love that you just created your own list, because not a lot of classes on how to become a leader. It's kind of like we all just figured it out as we went along.
Yes, it is. And so that's, for me, that's why it was looking at people. So I like teaching. Teaching was the same thing. When I started teaching, the very first thing I did is I looked back at the professors that I had. And the professors that connected with me. I was one of those kids that I didn't know if I should be in college, if I was smart enough to be in college. My belief was, if you taught at a university, you had to be among the smartest people in the world. And so I'm not that smart. So why would I be at this university? But the professors interacted with me, talked with me, took the time to make me feel like I belonged there. And so I'm walking away saying, this person is really smart and really important, but yet they took the time to talk to me. They took the time to listen to me. They took the time to give advice. And that's how I started teaching, based on those professors that I had that made me feel like I belonged there. And that's what I want for every single student, that they should feel like they belong here.
Yeah. They filled your bucket with some confidence, it sounds like. And I keep thinking in this conversation today, Kelsey and George, about all these corollaries to courage. It is self-esteem. It is confidence. It's really hard to be brave if you don't have some of these things in your toolkit. And so this investment in other people, back to culture, this investment in other people, this contribution to how people feel about being at the place actually unleashes in some ways this innovation and risk-taking that you're talking about, and how important all these other pieces. You're not just sort of innately brave, and so there I'm going to speak. There's some other conditions can help enable that too. So I just love all of that.
You have to, it's growth. You have to grow into that role, just like any other role that we grow into. And so you grow into that confidence, being able to look at yourself, to assess yourself, and to say, this is what I need to work on, or this is what I need to change. The other is when you can create that environment where you have people who will talk with you and share information with you. But people who have that ability to share that information, they have to be willing to do it. So that's the other side of the story. A young man that I was working with, and one day we were talking, and he just thanked me. And what he said to me was, people like you don't talk to people like me. And so we explored that. And it was people in positions of power. That's how he perceived me or saw me. Didn't talk to people like him and he was not in a position of power, but how do you get the information to grow and move on if people who have the answers won't take the time and talk to you? And so for us who have a lot of answers, who are in a good position, who are in leadership positions or positions of authority, do we reach back? Do we help those? Do we talk to those? Do we take the time to share information, to listen, and to give advice? That's what we have to do as leaders and as educators.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actions matching your words or values seems to be tremendously important always, because everyone's watching all of the time, right?
Yes.
So, George, what's something that you're still working on today as you've come into this role? You're moving, helping other people. What are you working on right now for yourself?
The biggest thing for me, moving into this role or any of these leadership roles, is you still have to find time for yourself. And it's so easy not to. So when someone says, have you taken a vacation? And if your response is, like a lot of times my response is, I'm working on it, that's not a good answer.
No, it's not.
The answer should be, yes, it's scheduled, or yes, I had one and I'm coming back. So that's self-care. So that's the thing that I'm still working on, is self-care. How to find time for myself, how to take a break, how to get away. And it's not a lack of trust in who would be running the university if I'm not there. It's this thing that's what I grew up with, that if you agree to do the job, do the job. And so I can agree to do the job and do the job, but I can also take that step away and let others who are competent. I mean, if you look at people at the university, I have extremely competent people who, if I'm not here, they could run the university. So it's not that. It's that I have to take that step away and say, George, take that break, walk away, do something else, relax, have fun, do something, and everything will be here.
Yeah. Were you born and raised in Michigan?
Yes, true? I grew up in Detroit. Yes.
So I call this Midwest responsibility is a true thing, right? I think this, and I've also said right a lot, so I'm just going to pause and call myself out in this podcasting cadence of I worked really hard to not say right at the end of sentences, and I just keep saying it today. But I think Midwest responsibility is a real thing. This idea of we were born and raised to work hard, to show up, our actions, our values, the way in which, and sometimes it's we do what we said we do, and we're all in. You're all in on this. It's not even that it's, I'm sure your role is very stressful, but you love what you do, right? You've chosen this job and this career, so you're in it, and you're in it for the people and the teams and all of that. So how to be committed to that way of being and have a life outside of work is an interesting, I find, with people from the Midwest in particular.
It is that ability to know that, yes, you've agreed to do something and you're going to do it, but to take that step away and find ways to rejuvenate yourself or re-energize yourself so that you come back stronger.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So all the people that are on George's team that are listening to the podcast, we can come and ask him if he has a vacation planned or help you work on your self-care.
And then the other side of that is where someone's going on vacation or someone is sick or whatever, and they're saying, well, I'm on vacation or I'm sick, but if you need something, you can call. And people know my answer is, I'm not going to call you while you're on vacation. I'm not going to email you while you're on vacation because I want you to be on vacation. Relax. I said, it'll all be here when you get back. No one's, I always tell people that you think about job security. And I said, you don't have to worry about job security because nobody's going to do your job while you're gone. It will be there. That's right.
Don't worry. It's all going to sit right here.
That's right. It'll be sitting right there.
The Midwest responsibility is, hey, call me if you need something. That's the Midwest responsibility. But our job is to not take advantage of that, I suppose, right? At the end of the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That to me is important because, again, how can you rejuvenate if you're being called all the time?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to step away. And so you will not get an email from me while you're gone. And it has to be it's a rare situation that you'll even get an email from the weekends from me. You won't get an email on Saturday or Sunday from me. It can wait till Monday. Because if I send it and even say, don't respond to Monday, there's a part of you wants to respond. But if there is no email, then there's nothing to respond to.
I think that's such an emotionally intelligent way to lead and the self-regulation. I've seen people put that tag at the bottom of their email. My work hours might not match your working hours. Don't feel like you need to respond. It's like, I don't like that. Like, we all kind of societally know the hours. I'm not sure that's a word, but we know the hours of working. So can I regulate myself to not have to ask you the question until an appropriate hour or time necessary? I love that so much.
Well, before we wrap, I wanted to just, this conversation is reminding me of a little story, if I could. I worked at Indiana University years ago, and I had made a decision that turned out to be really dumb. And a student came to see me, and she was a little nervous. And she challenged me. She challenged my decision, and it turns out rightfully so. And I remember in the conversation listening to her and observing this nervousness, and I said, I can tell you're really anxious. Talk to me a little bit about how you had the courage. And she told me she had been in the marketing office of the building I was in with some fairly early career kind of staff. And there was a sign hanging on the wall by the founder of the Great Panthers movement, Maggie Kuhn. And the quote said, stand before the people you fear and speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. She had read this on the wall of the sort of earlier career staff person, which gave her the courage to come challenge me. And she was right. And so ever since, when I would start a new job, I would print these little cards with that saying and give it to the hall directors and housing, give it to the custodial staff. I meant it, but I was also wanting them to hang it and put it where they would see it. And a student taught me that. And I guess I just appreciated, George, what you were talking about, reaching back and unleashing your staff and encouraging people to take risks and have the courage. And it reminded me of when that student taught me what a staff person's wall hanging taught her. So really,
Everybody
so
can teach us a lesson.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And you have given our listeners so many lessons today, and we're so grateful. And failure can be celebrated and is important, actually, to celebrate for risk taking, and helping people have a voice is really what leaders have a responsibility to do. The importance of worthiness, really, and self-esteem and culture to courage. And, looking at your own experience, as you mentioned, to be your teacher, we're just so grateful. And when you left to become a chancellor in Pennsylvania, we were happy for you, but we're really happy you're back in Michigan. So thanks for coming home and being with us today, George.
Oh, I thank you very much. I'm excited to be back in Michigan. I making the decision to come to the Saginaw Valley State University was just a great move for me and my family. And it's the commitment to community, the commitment to making a difference. And that I'll end with that. I always talk about that we need to build a bridge to the community, not for people in the community to come to us, but for us to go to the community. And by going into the community, that then people will feel comfortable to cross that bridge to come to us. And if we can do that, we can make a difference in our communities. And I think a university should do that. We are part of the community, not separate from the community. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great talking with you both, and excited about what you all are going to be doing in the future, and the people that you're going to be talking to. So thank you so much.
Loren, are you ready for some extra credit?
Yes, I am.
We don't have a quiz. I didn't prepare you.
No preparation.
I didn't even really prepare a question, but I just want to ask.
So basically, we're very unprepared, but let's tape it.
Yeah, let's record it. So it's October. Halloween is this month. Are you into Halloween? Are you a Halloween person? Not a Halloween person? Do you have any traditions or things related to?
No. Honestly, I'm glad people like Halloween. I always went trick-or-treating. It took my daughter. I love to see the little kids, but we don't do the whole yard and all that. Frankly, where we live, we don't even get trick-or-treaters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty out of the way.
Oh.
So we have a neighbor, though, who's 1.5, and we'll go over there to see. We'll see Opal. See what she's dressed. Take her some candy. That'll be it. How about you? Good. Are you decorate the lawn?
Do you have a favorite costume that you wore?
My favorite,
in your life?
Yeah, my favorite wasn't. I don't remember the year, but it was Halloween. I left Natchez early to fly home because it was Halloween. And I landed like an hour before I had to go out with my daughter, and we dressed in as sort of peaceniks, we tie-dyed shirts. I had the big wig, the fro, the peace sign. She had flowers in her hair. That's my favorite ever. We looked good. That's awesome. I'm going to send you a picture.
Yeah.
Do you dress up?
Maybe we can post it on our LinkedIn. No. The last year I dressed up was the first year I started dating Brian. He doesn't love Halloween. I could take it or leave it. So Same. We're a leave it kind of family.
Do you turn the lights off and hope nobody knocks on the door?
We're not that bad. Where we lived in Virginia when we were in Crozet, we were in a community that everyone even drove into. And so there was just thousands of kids and people. I used to live in one of those. All of those pieces. And we maybe would go to the local bar and put big bowls of candy on our porch so people could just take handfuls.
Help themselves, yeah.
Help themselves. Yeah. But our big thing is we like candy corn. not just any candy corn. It has to be Brock's candy corn. And we only are allowed to eat it in the month of October because otherwise it gets
Yeah. And then you have a dentist appointment pre-scheduled for November.
Yes. And so I will say the interesting part of where we do live in Baltimore, people love Halloween around here. Their yards are decorated. There's all these creepy things. There's hands coming out of the ground.
So people are into it.
I know. Well, I hope you have a great Halloween.
Well, thank you, and enjoy your candy corn.
Okay, well, until next time.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey, Harmon, Finn, and Loren and Rullman.